Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul CX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode we shall be reviewing the Macchi C.205 serie 1, an Italian fighter aircraft going to tier of 3 and a battle rating of 3.3. For the purposes of today's historical overview, we'll be focusing on the development of the V variant of the C.205 from its inception through to the Serie 1 sub-variant. With that, we begin thus. In the latter half of 1941, the Regia Aeronautica, the Italian Royal Air Force, sought to further improve the performance of the Macchi C.202 fighter. To this end, they decided to license build the German Daimler-Benz DB605 1475 horsepower liquid-cooled supercharged inverted V12 engine. The decision to use this engine was made on the grounds that Italian industry to this point had failed to produce its own high-power engines. The result of this decision was that two development paths were to form. The first, which we'll be focusing on today, was the direct installation of a DB605 engine into the C.202 airframe, leading to the C.202 biz, or the improved version of the C.202, and the second was an invitation for Italian fighter manufacturers to enter versions of their designs which featured the DB605 engine. All these fighters would be known as Caccia della Serie 5 or Series 5 fighters, as denoted by the usage of the number 5 in their design names. These would include the Regione RE2005, the Fiat G55 and the Macchi C.205N, Orione being Orion in English. Focusing on Path 1 in particular, the C.202 biz was soon redesignated the C.205V, V standing for Veltro or Greyhound, to link the plane to the Caccia della Serie 5 invitation, meaning there were two development paths for the C.205 itself, the V and the N. The process for installing the DB605 engine was rather simple, whereby the preceding engine, the C.202, was a license-built copy of the Daimler-Benz DB601, and as this engine shared similar properties in terms of dimensions to the DB605, the two engines were interchangeable with some minor modifications, meaning that the DB605 could be retrofitted rather easily. The C.202 design was also improved, featuring a larger tail section and a redesigned cockpit. The net result was a fighter that was near identical in terms of manoeuvrability to the C.202, but stronger climb rate and top speed, thanks to the license-built copy of the DB605 engine, this being managed by Fiat with the RA1050 RC58 Typhoon engine. Flying for the first time on the 19th of April 1942, the C.205V was to deliver on its promised performance, where it could reach a top speed of 642 km an hour or 399 miles per hour at an altitude of 7,200 meters or 23,622 feet. Immediately put into production with the Serie 1 sub-variant, the fighter would not enter operational service until February of 1943, this being due to the low availability of the Fiat-built engine. Yet, despite its initially lacklustre armament of two 12.7mm Breda-SAFAT machine guns in the nose and two 7.7 Breda-SAFAT machine guns in the wings, as taken from the C.202, the Serie 1s proved themselves to be at least equal in terms of performance and manoeuvrability to their allied contemporaries, such as the Supermarine Spitfire Mark IX. Their first combat role was at the end of April 1943, where the 1st Squadron escorted maritime and aerial convoys to and from Tunisia. A total of 100 Serie 1 fighters were produced, whereby the final fighter would leave the production line in July of 1943, giving way to the Cannon Arms Serie 3 sub-variant later on in the year. And with our historical overview concluded, let us take a look at how the C.205 Serie 1 fighter handles in the skies of War Thunder Arcade. Today's gameplay is brought to you from the ground strike map Guyana Highlands. For this we'll be using the following setup. Stealth belts for both types of machine gun, the reasoning being it in our experience that these belts will accommodate our surprise boom and zoom style of play very well, where our overall ethos will be to bounce our foes, open fire and hopefully not have them react to our incoming fire before it's too late. By having them react, they'll start to provide evasive manoeuvres which will make it harder for us to get shots on target with our lacklustre armament. And by having no tracer within our belts, we'll find that if we happen to miss our foe, they may be none the wiser to our presence on their 6, with a lack of tracer whizzing past their cockpit. And when we start to strike their fuselage, it will take them longer to react because they won't be able to use the tracer to denote our position in the sky relative to them. Our gun convergence is set to 400 meters, noting that only affects our low caliber 7.7mm machine guns, whereby these machine guns have a maximum effective range of 650 meters in our experience, due to the low muzzle velocity on these machine gun rounds, causing them to start to experience vertical drop-off at 650 meters distance plus. Therefore, a 400 meter gun convergence is going to enable us to use these machine guns in effect with our 12.7mm machine guns mounted in the nose. As for our fuel load, we are taking our standard 30-minute fuel load to ensure we can make it to the end of the game unscathed on fuel capacity. And with that, we come straight onto the fact that the Guyana Highlands map acts as a brilliant indicator of how strong the overall engine performance and climb rate of the C.205 serie 1 is, whereby you will be hard pressed to find a plane that's able to outclimb the serie 1 at its battle rating, let alone all the way up to a battle rating of 4.3. This plane is going to rival the best climbers that it can see, such as the Messerschmitt Bf109, the P63A10 King Cobra, and the A7N2. And this places this plane at a very nice position, whereby it's able to get to altitude at least the same rate as its competitors, if not outrun them to in excess of 5,000 metres. And for reference, on some of the more typical ground strike maps, you can go from a starting spawn altitude of 2,500 metres in this plane at a 25 degree angle climb, balancing your emergency power on and off, to in excess of 6,000 metres altitude before you need to level out and start building up your speed once more. And this puts this plane in a strong position to intercept those who proceed to intercept your friendly bombers, such as the P-38 G1 Lightning there, and we're trying to do so against the Spitfire F Mark 9. But at this point we come onto a spot of difficulty, which is the firepower of this plane, and that's where this plane is really let down. Because with only two 12.7mm machine guns in the nose and two 7.7mm machine guns in the wings, that means that unless you get a clear shot on your foe, particularly on their cockpit, or alternatively a clear sustained shot on the fuselage of your opposition, you're not going to be able to bring them down quickly and they'll start to react, such as the Spitfire there, whereby we got the P-38 because they were distracted in pursuing our friendly B-25. Now in return, this means that going after enemy bombers is going to be difficult, whereby you'll need to focus on weak spots, go for the engines, go for the gunner positions, try to get rid of the gunners before you can then sit behind your foe and just keep dumping in the rounds. Which is why, as we're about to see against the lightly armed in terms of machine gun firepower and lightly armoured in terms of overall strength for their fuselage, this B-18 is going to prove a major problem for our C-205, whereby we're going to have to put in a lot of ammunition and we're going to take a lot of damage in response. The damage aspect to our own fuselage is through the fact that the durability of this plane carries over from the C-202. This plane suffers when hit, particularly by 20mm cannon shells and higher caliber, but even against 12.7mm machine guns and lower caliber all the way down to say a 7.7mm machine gun, as found in a good number of the British bombers. Now here we could be more evasive, but we're doing this to make a point, which is that our fuselage is not going to take a long duration of hits, and we're fortunate enough to be alive right now without our pilot going to say red in the bottom left hand corner of our screen, as we finally set the B-18A on fire, take out one of their gunners, and we'll leave them to burn to death. And this goes to emphasise how poor this plane is in being able to enforce the bomber interceptor role. If it had 20mm cannon, you'd be able to get around this by simply diving in at high speed to the 20mm cannon and shredding your opponent before breaking away, perhaps taking one or two hits, but nothing in excess of what we've just seen. And that means, as we'll see later on, we have to be much smarter in our approach to bringing down bombers if we enter that role. But in the meantime, as we go for a reload, one thing we can say is that we do have a lot of ammunition available. 1,000 7.7mm machine gun rounds and 800 12.7mm machine gun rounds mean that you're not going to run out of ammo typically before you score the kill for your sustained firepower, and you can even pick up a succession of kills before you have to reload. And due to the low caliber of the armament, your reloads are fast compared to the reloads on say 20mm plus caliber cannon. Now on top of this, one must consider that at higher altitudes you do have a couple key things in your favour. One of the most important ones is altitude limit, whereby on your engine, your maximum ideal altitude limit is 7,500 metres. Go above this, your engine performance starts to drop off slightly, and by the time you hit 8,500 metres altitude, you'll notice the drop off considerably. As for the control surfaces, there's a slightly different pattern. So long as you can keep your speed above 400 km an hour, the only time you're going to really experience a heaviness in your control surfaces is when you go above 8,000 metres altitude. But until you get to that point, if you keep your speed up above 400 km an hour as mentioned, you'll find that at 6,000 metres plus there will not be heaviness in your controls, unlike a good number of the planes that you're going to face, such as the P-39 in Aerocobra, which suffers from control heaviness at say 5,000 metres altitude by comparison. And in return, this means that you're very agile at higher altitudes. And on top of this, when you consider your great straight line energy retention, as we've just seen getting away from the Aerocobra after coming out of our dive, this means that you can latch onto the 6 of foes, and in the case of the R2M, finally knock out its tail control, which will cost them their life shortly. And in return, this means that when you've got a foe on your 6, instead of diving away from them, sometimes it may be more advisable to proceed in a straight line away from them, as then your foe is not going to be able to keep up. And if you find yourself at a low speed to start with, your straight line acceleration comes in handy once more, whereby you can go from your stall speed of 160 km an hour to 475 km an hour on engine power alone very quickly, and if you add in more emergency power, this threshold goes up to 550 km an hour. However, having talked about stall, it's also important to note that near stall you're going to have an amount of difficulty. Below 300 km an hour your control surfaces actually become quite heavy, particularly the elevator, and as you go down to 225 km an hour you'll start to experience stall characteristics in the aircraft, particularly around the elevator becoming heavy to the point that you'll not be able to adjust the nose position of this plane, I lift it up or down very easily, and this will leave you a sitting duck in the skies, and means that going into a loop manoeuvre at say 300 km an hour is extremely dangerous, because this brings us on to the fact that the elevator of this plane has a wide loop circle. In turn, this means that when you do go for a loop, you're going to bleed a heck of a lot of energy out of the aircraft, and it's a manoeuvre that should not be considered lightly. Now, in terms of stall recovery, what should be noted is the fact that when you recover from your stall, it's a very long recovery process, whereby the plane is going to become unresponsive for a good period of time, and you'll need to get up to 260 km an hour before you can start to manoeuvre as per the norm. Even then, considering the fact that because you're below 300 km an hour, there will be an inert heaviness to your control surfaces. Now, latching onto the 6 of this P-61A here and being a lot smarter in coming from underneath where they haven't got the coverage thanks to their quad 12.7mm machine gun turret on top, let's just talk about the control surfaces of this plane. In general, your roll rate, or your ailerons, have the highest responsiveness out of all three control surface domains, whereby you can roll on this aircraft very quickly. When you go to higher speeds, you will experience a lockup. Between 600 and 800 km an hour, you will find that you'll lose your roll rate by 75%. And at that point, it becomes rather difficult to roll once you get to 800 km an hour, but because of your above average dive speed acceleration, but not exceptional dive speed acceleration, you haven't exactly got a problem, because you will not typically find yourself going to an excess of 800 km an hour when diving down on a foe. And here's an example on the F4F Wildcat, whereby by the time we close in on open fire on them, we're at approximately 730 km an hour, not within the maximum lockup threshold, so if they started to manoeuvre a little bit earlier, we would have been able to follow to an extent. As for your rudder, you do have a strong, snappy rudder that carries over from the C.202, much like your roll rate, whereby you will find that between 550 and 750 km an hour, you will lose 75% of your rudder shift capability. Now, this is not too much of a problem once again, because due to your above average dive speed acceleration, you're not going to typically be going above 750 km an hour and lose the ability to make precise shots in a dive thanks to the adjustment of your rudder. The elevator is where things get interesting, because as already mentioned, your loop circle is quite wide, and because your elevator is average at best because it's heavy to respond in general, what you do end up finding is that between 700 and 800 km an hour, you will lose 25% of your elevator response, which is not punishing, but you have to keep in mind that if you do not react when you're heading down towards ground level and a dive quickly enough, you can actually plunge into the ground in this plane by surprise, and that can be rather embarrassing, as I've personally found out. But outside of this, you do have a package that's well suited to the concept of boom and zoom, because you have the sustained roll rate up towards your maximum dive speed, i.e. that 930 km an hour, and you also have the ability to continue precise shots with your machine guns up to 750 km an hour before the rudder locks up to its maximum threshold. Now, when we move along in the sky, what is your ideal speed range? Well, it's typically between 400 and 600 km an hour. Now, this means that you're going to start losing some of your rudder controllability, but not to the point where it becomes punishing. And by being between 400 and 600 km an hour, as we've seen in the typical engagements we've been into so far, you'll be in your maximum maneuverability threshold, and as we can see at 8,160 meters altitude right now, the plane just cruises along very happily, whereas other planes such as the Spitfires we're seeing, the I-185s, etc., will be struggling up at such high altitude. So what about an ideal altitude range? Well, as you lose a degree of engine performance above 7,500 meters altitude, I would personally advise keeping between 3,000 and 7,000 meters altitude. Now, typically you're not going to see too much action at your battle rating tier above 6,000 meters, but it can occur every so often, particularly on this map or on other maps as well, when you're pursuing enemy bombers or trying to bring down a foe who's chasing one of your bombers. But below 3,000 meters altitude, you start to notice a slight drop off in engine performance once again. It's not too noticeable until you get below a 1,500 meters altitude, but it's there, and it can be rather annoying in the back of your mind to think about. In diving down the P-38 here, we score a number of hits, but note how because we weren't accurate enough in the initial portion of our burst, we weren't able to pick up a critical hit or perhaps even the kill. But in breaking away, we can see that in terms of energy retention in the vertical for boom and zoom passes, we've got strong energy retention, and we will regain the vast majority of the altitude we sacrifice and be returned to the starting speed of our dive in the boom and zoom pass. In the horizontal, you maintain a good amount of energy in the turn, whereby you'll lose roughly 50 to 75 km an hour speed when going into your flat standard turn. As for flat turns on the rudder, i.e. so not your flat turn of rolling the plane 90 degrees and pulling up on the elevator, You can flat turn on the rudder rather nicely, although the turn circle itself is wide because of the amount of speed you'll carry in this plane. And in diving down the P-40 Kitty Hawk at this point, we try to knock them out of skies, set them on fire by looks of things, helping them go away from our teammate 6, and we pick up the assist off of the PBJ. In breaking away at this point, we can see again how we maintain so much speed in the straight line in coming out of our dives, and that is one of the assets we have to use in our favour. Rather than trying to zoom climb away, instead just go in a straight line and you'll be safe, and it means we can carry our momentum through to this P-43 Lancer, picking up a number of hits but no actual kill by looks of things. And now we look down towards an enemy Corsair and try to rip them out of the sky as well. Although we do pick up the kill on the Lancer, perhaps they crashed into the ground. In diving down the Corsair at this point, it looks as though we've knocked out their engine or crippled it, picking up the critical hit, and that'll be enough to pick up another kill. In breaking away at this point, what else is there to note about the C.205 Serie 1? Well, one key thing about the stock nature of this plane, so when you first get it, is that the stock performance is practically the same as a fully upgraded C.202 EC, which we reviewed only a couple of weeks ago, link available in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now. I mean, the stock grind of this plane outside of its firepower is lovely and it's not painful whatsoever. I mean that you can really take the fight to the foes when you down batter rating this plane to 3.0. But with that, the game ends and it's time for us to take a look at the post-game stats. With our 8 kills and single assist, we were able to pick up 33,667 silver lions and 2,530 research points. To defeat the C.205 Serie 1 in a given matchup then, I can recommend one or two approaches. The first is to force this plane into a low altitude or low speed turn fight, particularly below 2,000 meters altitude, at which point the engine performance of this plane drops off and there won't be too much altitude space for the C.205 pilot to be able to dive away from you in the first instance, or at least to build up some speed. And on top of that, if the speed of the turn flight is below 300 km an hour, the control surfaces of the C.205 will start to become rather unresponsive and heavy, particularly the elevator. And if you can force the C.205 into a loop at this point, it will go below its stall speed of 160 km an hour very quickly, and this plane will be a sitting duck in the sky for you to come around and fish them off. Planes such as the Messerschmitt 19F4, the J2M2 and the LA5F and the Yakovlev Yak-1s will all excel in this regard compared to the C.205. Meanwhile, the second option is to lure this plane into a head-to-head if you've got cannon armament in the nose or in the wings. Planes such as the I-185, M82, and the Messerschmitt 19F4, the P-51 cannon-armed Mustang, and the LA5F all come to mind once again, whereby the C.205 pilot only has to offer two 12.7mm machine guns in the head-on, whereas you've got the superior firepower and you'll be able to shred them out the sky what with their poor overall durability, whereas your plane will typically have the superior durability. And this approach can also be extended to planes with an abundance of 12.7mm machine guns in the wings, such as the P-47D Thunderbolt, particularly if it's got a long distance convergence setting of 700 meters plus. But by avoiding such circumstances today in our own C.205 Serie 1, what we've hopefully demonstrated is that this plane as a performance fighter is a huge step up from the preceding C.202. But that's the only change, because with the introduction of the Daimler-Benz DV605 engine, you'll find that your climb rate is the superior at your batter rating tier and able to match up to those that are the best at a batter rating all the way up to 4.3. But in return, with the same firepower, which was rather frustrating on the C.202 in the first place, but now one batter rating higher at 3.3, you lack the ability to bring down foes in a single pass, requiring a much more sustained approach and a surprise approach to eliminate them out of the sky, whereas their planes, armed with 20mm cannon typically, will start to be able to get those one-hit kills or those 1 second burst kills which you so desperately crave. Therefore, in the case of the C.205 Serie 1, this Greyhound really is a case of all bark and no bite. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, as always, take care and good luck in the skies.